Welcome back, everyone. Today, we have a truly fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're going to unpack a highly provocative and, honestly, pretty escalating text written by an author named Zhui Feng, titled How to Break Free from Suffering. Now, this is a piece of writing that starts off with very relatable human emotions, but then it rapidly scales into a sweeping, radical blueprint for restructuring the entire global order. It's like a massive puzzle, and we're going to map out exactly how this text builds its argument from the ground up, using its own unique logic. Okay, let's dive into this.
Take a second right now and ask yourself, what is the true root of your mental suffering? Seriously, think about your own feelings of anxiety, maybe that occasional depression, the worry, or just that fear that creeps in during a quiet moment. Well, the text we're analyzing today begins precisely right there. It uses this universally relatable pain, those feelings of being deeply troubled or hopeless, as the launchpad for a massive philosophical journey. It hooks us by validating that everyday human discomfort before taking us down a very unexpected path to find the supposed cure.
Section 1. Defining human suffering. The text divides human suffering into three distinct buckets. First up, there's physical suffering, which the author argues is actually manageable. It can be endured and healed over time. Second is spiritual suffering, which the text claims can be totally eliminated by establishing faith in what it calls the greatest creator. But then we hit the third category, mental suffering. According to the text, suffering that arises from the mind is the ultimate, most stubborn, and absolute hardest to cure hurdle that we face. Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is how directly it identifies the source of that mental hurdle. So the crucial point is this. Zhui Feng's core thesis states that mental suffering stems entirely from a lack of freedom. Any form of restriction, whether you are physically confined, mentally boxed in, financially trapped, or blocked in your movements, translates directly into mental anguish. The inability to experience total freedom is, in this framework anyway, the literal engine of human suffering.
Section 2. The Roots of Anguish.
The author outlines a very specific methodology for tracking down the roots of our suffering. We're instructed to look, and I quote, from the closest to the farthest. The text argues that the closer something is to you in proximity or relationship, the more likely it is to cause immediate, acute suffering. On the flip side, the far sources, like big institutions and groups further away from your daily life, well, they still cause pain, but the resulting suffering is somewhat easier to bear on a day-to-day basis. Here is exactly how the text breaks that whole concept down. For the near sources of suffering, we're looking at the people most intimate to us. We're talking spouses, parents, colleagues, friends, and even spiritual masters or fellow practitioners. Then, zooming out to the far sources, we hit massive societal and global structures, governments, political parties, religions, and extremist groups. The text neutrally positions both, your closest loved ones and these massive global institutions, as the primary culprits restricting your freedom and generating human pain. And this brilliantly illustrates how the author maps specific lost freedoms directly to specific institutions. Physical restriction, the text blames marital relationships. Mental restriction, blamed entirely on political parties and religious dogmas. Financial restriction, pointed right at relatives and market monopolies. And freedom of movement, restricted by the sheer machinery of the state. It's a highly structured, systematic teardown of the pillars of modern human life, blaming them directly for our internal anguish. Section 3. Why current methods fail. The author boldly states, quote, "Spiritual practices and chicken soup for the soul are merely scratching the surface." The author completely dismisses traditional moral education, the teachings of ancient sages, religious doctrines, and modern self-help. In this framework, all of these coping mechanisms are nothing more than temporary anesthesia. They don't actually fix the core issue, they just numb the pain of the lost freedoms we outlined a moment ago.
Section 4. A radical six-step solution.
Now here is the explicit, radical, six-point blueprint proposed by the author to completely dismantle current societal structures. Step 1, eliminate marriage and dissolve families to regain physical freedom. Steps 2 and 3, remove political parties and religion from government to regain mental freedom. Step 4, open all global borders to allow for completely free migration. Step 5, implement a specific living and production model called the second home of Life Chanyuan. And finally, step 6, transition all global citizens into the era of Life Chanyuan. As an explainer, it is just fascinating to observe how this text moves from individual feelings of anxiety straight into a call for the total dissolution of the nuclear family and the modern nation-state. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the utopian future.
The text is very clear about what this utopian future is not. The proposed future society explicitly rejects the two dominant global governance models of our current era. It states the future will neither be a legalistic, law-based society like the United States, nor will it be a system of rule by man like China. It essentially discards both Western and Eastern paradigms entirely.
Instead, it proposes what it calls the holographic way. This is defined as a future societal state that is guided by saints and managed by sages. It envisions an unconventional, honestly almost mystical governance structure that completely replaces modern global legal, political, and democratic systems with enlightened leadership.
And what does this holographic way actually promise to deliver? Well, an absolute idyllic utopia. The text promises that under this system, the whole world becomes one unified family. Crime basically disappears, meaning doors are not bolted at night. Generational care is perfected. The young are educated and the old are fully cared for. Talents and resources are utilized with perfect efficiency. And everyone lives in peace. According to the author, this results in favorable weather, thriving industries, and the total, permanent disappearance of human suffering.
This brings us to the ultimate question this text leaves us wrestling with. We've mapped out a journey that started with everyday anxiety and ended with the proposed abolition of marriage, nations, and laws, all in pursuit of a utopian era. So I leave you with this. Does achieving ultimate mental freedom truly require the total dismantling of modern society as we know it? Or is the cost of this proposed world without suffering simply way too high? It's a provocative ideological framework, and it certainly forces us to think deeply about the structures we live within every single day. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.